there's still 4, 5, 6, Kyle.
Throw wide the gates.
Well, Kyle, we're, I don't know what that was, but I was just sweating afterwards. I had to change my clothes. Today's a big day, man. We're gonna talk about finally seeing Stormblood's credits. We're gonna talk about how Stormblood dovetails into Shadowbringers, which already makes me want to go off, because when you and I started our first playthrough of Final Fantasy XIV and making these videos, and we were getting our heads wrapped around the fact that we're playing an MMO that consistently releases patches and a consistent amount of patches every single expansion, which is something that we're not used to. Looking at you other games, you know what I'm talking about. A lot of folks wanted to tell us at the 0.4 patches and onward that it's basically the beginning of the next expansion. And that was really true for Heaven's Ward. Like, really true for Heaven's Ward, and even pretty true for A Realm Reborn patches. I was really surprised, now that we're here at the end of all of Stormblood. We're going to talk about the final credits of Stormblood today. I was really surprised how much 4.4 up through the beginning of Shadowbringers still felt like Stormblood. They're still telling the story of Stormblood from 4.4 all the way up through the end of the expansion. I think more so than Heaven's Ward or A Realm Reborn. I started getting nostalgic for Stormblood before I was even done with it. Like, I really like this expansion, leaving it, man. Like, there's a lot of opinions and popular opinions when it comes to Stormblood, but I'm leaving it super positive. I really enjoyed this experience.
I really enjoyed the end here. I like the journey. It was a great journey. It was an important bit of world building that I feel like we needed to pull off what they're going for. And in our last video, I called it the ticking clock. And that's what I'm excited about. We have been transported to another world, another universe, perhaps. Another star.
A mirror, a reflection, Kyle.
A reflection is a good way to put it, yes. And back home, there's war. There's an urgency, and we're needed in both locations. And that's a really good duality for a storyline. I also think Final Fantasy XIV is at its best when we have special powers that are somehow involved. Whether that's the Echo and crystal collecting like we had in The Realm Reborn, Heaven's Ward and our Midgard-Sormer powers and our dragon relationships we were building. Stormblood really didn't have that. We had play with the Echo with Fordola and Xenos, but we were more of a soldier in this game. And I'm really happy to see the game return to where I think it's strongest.
No!
So where we left off, we lost Alice. Warrior of Light is now the one I would assume feeling pretty alone at the end of the Gimlet Dark. And we're treated to, essentially at the end, what would have been the end of the previous patch, 4.5, right? We get the stinger of Xenos. Xenos Gundam with Elidibus pilot marching onto the warfront. Adds a sense of urgency to everything that's going on. Because we're like, oh god, Xenos is back and he's piloted by a Damacian. This cannot be good.
This plays into that sort of power structure I really like. The Grey Wardens, the Jedi, whatever special faction it may be. I mean, BioWare just makes up a new special faction every single game they make because it works so well. Yeah, whatever it may be, it works. And having, well, I guess Hoary Boulder's kind of in charge of the Rising Stones right now because we can't make decisions as we are a silent participant in this world and we aren't really affecting the gameplay in a choose-your-own-adventure kind of way.
Far be it from me to make this video longer than it's already going to be, but I had a thought recently, which we're not silent. We're just silent for us because the game doesn't want to make us sit through things we already know. But our Warrior of Lights are constantly /scheming.
We're hanging out at the Rising Stones home base, and Maxima arrives to give us a rundown of the political atmosphere, which I love now that he's fully defected. He's got on some casual Alamegan kind of style clothes, Eorzean clothes. But the Maxima voice actor did such an amazing job conveying really, really dry information in 4.5. Of all the voice actless scenes we've seen so far, I think this is one of my biggest disappointments. This should have been voice acted. It was such good political fantasy jargon, and he delivered it expertly, and he was sorely missed here. And then when we go outside and talk with Sid, there's this whole exchange about how like Sid's a hero to the Populari and how Sid is a true Garlean because he was willing to stand up to the Empire. It was a very emotional scene, and it really caps Sid's journey that we've had with him through Omega. And all that storyline of him coming into his own, realizing he's a powerful inventor for good, not just evil.
That made me feel good, because I feel for Sid. Sid's a character I've really taken a shine to. And the dude beats himself up a lot, so it was cool to have this scene where he's kind of vindicated in his life's decisions, at least in the eyes of, if nothing else, at least in the eyes of Maxima. So it was a nice touch. There's so many nice touches. And I'm sure we've steamrolled over some of them because there's just so much to talk about in these final scenes of Stormblood. But it was really cool. Really kind of, you're right. It tied in, and we played through Omega, so it's like we've seen all this. It's interesting how there's little breadcrumbs that kind of connect everything like that.
I love that Maxima is just so shaken by the Ascian reveal for Garlemald that they've all, as he says it, laid down their lives in service of a lie. Yeah, it might be a little disturbing having your entire glorious empire fall down around you.
What I like about this, and it's something the game's been doing, I think, very good the whole way, is showing that not all Garleans are, blindly in service of the Emperor, of the political machinations of the Empire, that there are those that disagree with it, and there's all kinds of different shades of Garlean citizen. And Maxima is just, I think, the latest example of that. Although I think also one of the better ones, one of the stronger ones. There's a duality between Maxima and what we saw in the previous patch with Gaius, because there's similar concerns here. That like Gaius, he's being driven. He even said as much because he feels bad about everyone that died serving under him for a lie. And here we have Maxima also kind of picking up shades of Gaius in 4.5.6 here.
When we meet Maxima, like right after Asahi goes down, granted, Maxima participates beforehand, but when Asahi dies and Maxima walks up and starts talking, you're like, thank you, somebody who makes sense. Let's just lower the tension a little bit here. Yeah.
Asahi was its own brand of concerning for me, because I was like, oh, so you're not like in league with you don't seem to like the Emperor all that much, but you're still crazy. So I was like, oh, damn. So yeah, there are different variations of Garleans, but it also doesn't mean that the ones that aren't down with the Emperor doesn't mean that they're necessarily aligned with our views or our desires or our goals. So rich tapestry, Final Fantasy XIV. I keep saying it, man. Reminds me of Game of Thrones when Game of Thrones was good.
I'm sure it was influence. We were now entering 2019. So Game of Thrones was now bad.
Starting to turn. It was starting to turn.
Yes. What? Final Fantasy decided to still be good. Game of Thrones was bad.
Oh, damn. 2019 was the start of the final episode? It's been that long since Game of Thrones ended?
So we speed off to the war front, the war table. Raban's there. It's a lot quieter.
Back to the war front?
Yeah. We've been coming and going. We're free agents. That's the fun of the Grey Warden Jedi, conundrum. And that's what I like. We go see Raban. He says, we're winning. And suddenly, the Imperials break through the defenses, led by none other than Xenos. And here's that moment where the Warrior of Light has a job to do. It's our job to take him down. But special powers come up. A call happens. And it's so lonely this time.
You're speeding right past the fact that it felt like it was a race against the clock. Like we had to get there on foot because we get to play as Hien and fight Xenos first to hold out before the Warrior of Light shows up.
Oh no, I'm not skipping over that. That was great. And the ticking clock is even tighter here because we are getting called constantly. And we need to get whatever we're going to get done before the next call interrupts us. Now here, I have several notes. They're all good. They're all good notes. The battle with Hien, Lise, and Yugiri was badass. The whole trial I've heard this is a new thing, but the sort of visual novel images in the top that accompany the lines that are not being read are nice. Those are great.
Where you get a portrait of the person speaking next to the line that they're speaking.
I hope they advance to the point of like Advance Wars or any of these games that you've probably played where there's like angry portrait, happy portrait, and it kind of cycles through the various emotions. A great touch, because honestly, it was really hard to tell when these popped up in the screen of MMO information. And particularly in the Warriors of Darkness battle now, forever ago, there was very important information in those lines about who you had to defend. You had to like help Alizé, you had to channel something special. Now these will actually gain my attention. There's a little touch here that Lise walks out with a bladed armament. And I just go, ooh, oh, Lise is in it for the kill. Previously, all fists, blunt weapons.
I loved everything about Lise in these final patches. I didn't really have time to talk about how much I enjoyed her lines during the Varys table meeting, but that too. Like, so many people were like, "Oh, Lise isn't great in Stormblood," so I probably came in with like low expectations, but I really like Lise at the end of this. She went on a hell of a journey, and it's been fun. It's been fun watching everyone become leaders. Like, we've been talking in recent videos about Alizé and her arc, and how through lack of options and every other Scion being cut off, Alizé was called into action. She had to lead, and she did a really good job with it. But Lise did too. She went on an even longer arc of having to learn how to lead. Takes a village to replace Alphino.
Because Alphino talks so much, making up for the whole village.
I would say that's Urianger, and him being out for the count is also abundantly clear.
You know what? I miss him. I'm excited to see more Urianger. He has been gone for far too long.
Oh yeah, totally. He's like a harbinger, man. That guy knows more than he lets on, and I'm enjoying him playing a bigger role than just speaking in old Shakespearean tongue.
Well, and he has straight up secret meetings with the Ascians, gets involved with the Warriors of Darkness. Like, he is in very deep, and then just kind of pieces out at the height of his interestingness there with Minfilia. Yugiri, badass throughout this whole solo duty. Like popping crazy limit breaks with like multi-swords and saving everybody. But really, main character, looking awesome out there. Yeah, it almost makes me wish they would do one job for the game. Because, you know, other games do this, right? Sometimes you might have an assault rifle or rocket launcher, and they just put a pistol in your hand for the sake of the cutscenes. Hien looks so good battling Xenos. I'm so happy I went Samurai. I can't imagine, because when we first got to Rauger's Reach and it got invaded, I played Astrologian. And it was super lame. Sorry, Astrologians, you're great. But it was so lame having my little dual disc globe and Xenos is chasing me around and blasting me with sword stuff. Hien showcased how these fights were supposed to go. And I think, you know, Dark Knight looks good too. I think being in melee with Xenos is evocative. In my personal opinion, none of the Xenos duties land with the same oomph if you're playing a spellcaster.
I wouldn't know. I've been a Dark Knight for all of it.
He looks so good. Like, it's a simplified samurai kit, but it's just a really solid seen through gameplay.
It's good, man. It's good. Although that one ability takes so long to charge up, and knowing that this is a simplified samurai kit, it does not sell me on wanting to play a samurai.
Just so you know, if you ever do, that's 8 buttons deep. You literally have pressed 8 other instant cast free moving buttons, and that's your final like channel blow all your stuff event. You aren't doing it that often. Well, you're doing it often, but it's a big deal, and it feels like it should be a big deal. It's worth it. It's worth the wait.
I could hear you thinking about the comments when he said it's not that often, and then dive rolling out of that and
because then I would assume that like I'm a bad samurai, which I kind of am. You know, I'm gonna be honest. Like, you know, I'm no expert.
You did Shinryu Extreme. I feel like that is worth at least some respect. You did Shinryu Extreme with mid-eye level. Really, it's just the fight with Hien was great. I'm enjoying these solo duties where we get to take control of our friends. What a triumphant arrival of us. Just running out. Getting to watch our models run out there. The only time I've ever seen you actually dressed for battle in this game. Me looking awesome because I always look awesome.
I was dressed in my Stormblood best here. You know, we were going to see it through. I was wearing my jobs gear that I received from doing my final quest. And you square up. Save Hien. You know, everyone's out, down for the count. And you have your big battle. I would love to read into this of our power increasing and how awesome we are, but it's Elidibus Xenos, not just Xenos. He does the usual explosion, which barely moves your health bar now, which is a cool note, as opposed to like level 62, where it completely floored you in one hit.
It's good storytelling through gameplay that we've faced off against Xenos multiple times now, and every single time we feel more powerful. And it's there in like how hard we get hit, how quickly we can kill I call them the Griffin swords, because Xenos does that too, right? Where he puts them in the ground, you got to burn them down.
I love the trope, the gimmick, whatever you want to call it, of the broken mask. It's something I've always enjoyed, scarring the beautiful bad guy's face. In this case, breaking Xenos' helmet, having his blue eye shine through it. It's a great look. It's a great scene. We get him down, and Xenos gets back up. Same body, no transfer, no respawn, still inhabiting his corpse. Makes you wonder how messed up that corpse might be in there. Granted, Xenos did have a little bandage thing around his neck. They also talked about the prince recovering quickly, so clearly Xenos has healed, and maybe has accelerated healing powers, rather than it being more like a zombie under there.
But wouldn't it be cool if it was a zombie under there?
It would be very cool if he was all messed up under there.
We got the thing from Solace, how he can reshape anything to be whatever it wants, and
Exactly.
the fishman reshape the other fish to have his stupid helmet. Like, so it's all fine. However, this also means that it's canon that Elidibus respects that thick booty because he has full control and could reduce it.
Well, he's role-playing the thick booty. He has to maintain it to keep the facade up. And at this point, Xenos Elidibus doesn't know that we know that he's Xenos Elidibus.
I now get that Elidibus would want to be keeping up appearances like out on the battlefield, but when he's in a 1v1 melee with us, also like it's still weird to me. It's still weird to me that he'd be like putting on the Xenos facade. Like, why bother? It's just us. There's no one around. All the other Garleans are in piles around us. I don't know. I was really expecting there to be a moment between us and Elidibus here. But instead it was, for me, it felt a little hollow because it's like, oh, this moment between us and Xenos is awesome, but it's not really Xenos. So the whole thing, this is just a little strange. It's still amazing. It's a minor thing tickling the back of my brain. But I had a lot of thoughts about this face-off.
There's a quick line earlier on that may cover this. I'm with you emotionally. I kind of wanted to have a, hey, you're an Ascian in there, and like have a little dialogue kind of moment with who used to be the emissary, pseudo-balance-oriented, possibly good Ascian, but not really kind of guy. Back when we're talking with Raubon, when he says that Xenos has arrived on the front and what a moral victory it would be to defeat him, that he would keep his men back and let us deal with them.
He may not die as such, but to see Lord Xenos fall on the battlefield would deal a heavy blow to Imperial morale. I'll see to it the men stay clear.
So both sides want to have this victory scene. Xenos wants to be seen defeating the Warrior of Light for the Garleans, and our side, the Eorzean Alliance, wants to see Xenos fall by Warrior of Light hands. So there are probably onlookers and people who don't need to know what's going on.
Yeah, but he's talking like this. He's got a mask on. Who's really going to hear him when he's talking to us?
Yeah, got a point. He does the whole like, we meet again, it's been so long kind of thing. He also says,
equilibrium must be restored, and only your death will redress the balance.
Pretty Ascian thing to say.
That's fair. That's a very Ascian line. And like Xenos didn't care. Even though it seems like the Garleans are more than aware of this whole balance concern, Xenos didn't care. Xenos is just a tried and true combat sexual.
Hey folks. So, I was going to spend my time editing a nice, lovely little promo for you all, but we're boarding up the house for the second hurricane. to come right over since we bought the place. So anyway, this is it. This is going to be the promo. You know, check out our Patreon. You know the spiel. Support ourbromance.com and check out the Grinding Gear podcast. I am hoping I don't miss any streams this week. But anyways, we should be fine. But this is what I'm busy with. So apologies that the promo isn't as well edited this week. Wish me luck. GG.
What an unfortunate call.
Unfortunate timing.
It was looking grim.
I felt that way in the moment. In the moment, I was just like, oh no. Was it looking grim? The only reason Xenos is winning is because we're getting a call in that exact moment.
He also just got back up and is kind of acting all full strength again. So
well,
he was kind of doing the I can do this all day kid sort of thing. And we were a bit winded from the prolonged encounter.
Did you just compare Xenos to Cap?
Yeah.
I guess that is Garlemald's ass.
That is America's ass.
So we get a little more out of our call. More analogous to the very first call where we did see ourselves in a darkened room. But here, there's a lot less mystery about what's going on, except for the fact that we don't know who we're talking about, except we totally know. We both were like, Catman, Leo Point, Catman. Yeah, we meet the enigmatic figure. We finally meet the body attached to the voice that's had very strong opinions about what to do with these gates.
Interesting note that while we're down, about to be transported, Xeno says,
Someone calls to you.
So clearly this call is a maybe astral link pearl, like it happens. He is familiar with this methodology of contact. And then we're teleported to Ocarina of Time plate. Very different than our previous Realm Reborn ones, but still on an astral kind of sea constellation business where we meet a corrupted looking Grahatia. It's an interesting, obviously they've hidden the tail. They've hidden the ears, the big marks. They've got the hood over the eyes, and the eyes would be the big tell as well.
No, Kyle, there's clearly no way we could have ever put together that is Grahatia. We were clearly spoiled, and we're clearly not owning up to the fact that we were spoiled. Our actual comments we have gotten below in the YouTube. The Catboys have the most anime as faces. They have that anime point when you're learning how to draw anime in grade school. That's how you're doing it. And that's what Catboys have, and this enigmatic figure has that Catboy jawline and those anime lips. It just looks pretty, just a little prettier than a here. Just a little prettier than, not the Bun Boys. The Bun Boys are very gorgeous. But you get my point.
It's just so unused. The Crystal Tower, we were required to do it in 2021. It's right there.
That's very much worth mentioning, right? Because we didn't start playing... I mean, you technically started playing years ago, but you were just kind of dabbling here and there. You and I did not start barreling through the MSQ with the intention of finishing it together until last year. And that was after the time, shortly after the fact, I think, right? That they made Crystal Tower a requirement.
Yeah, a lot of people I know went back and restarted the game so they could do Crystal Tower when Shadowbringers came out or was about to come out. Because they knew that this would be an important part of the story, that we were returning to Crystal Tower.
Yeah, so in that way, I think we kind of have unfair information, because if you played beforehand and you were only doing what was required and going through the MSQ, it's very likely you just skipped the Crystal Tower. We had to do it, and I feel like I was tipped off that, hey, Crystal Tower must be important because they made it a requirement of the MSQ. Grahatia was a total bro. I really liked Grahatia. It was cool questing through the Crystal Tower with him, and he makes a big sacrifice at the end. But for me, dude, honestly, the one thing that tipped me off was he's turning blue. He's turning blue, like the Emperor that we fight in the Crystal Tower has a similar, skin texture.
Crystal Tower was very, very thick. I really struggled to understand the clones and the siblings, and I could use a refresher on Crystal Tower lore. Hopefully, an enigmatic figure here gives us a little bit of a rundown of the meaning in there, because that is just an astral biz, fighting the Emperor dude and then going to the world of darkness and Nero turning into crystals. Super, super thick when you're just getting into the game.
Oh yeah, we got a few of the wings recently of just doing some alliance roulette. And I was like, I don't remember any of those fights, dude. Oh my God. None of that. All of that is like distant memory for me. We are going through this game at a snail's pace, so I will admit to that. But it was funny because we got some comments on last week's video like, don't you remember the cloning in Crystal Tower? And I'm here to tell you, no, I don't remember the cloning in the Crystal Tower.
Not at all. I think they're clones and maybe they were dealing with being clones, the brother and sister kind of business, but so Crystal Tower was Allegan Tech 211, like it was reaching spiritual levels. My information that I retain on Allegan technology is more based on like Coils of Bahamut, where they did have pods and channeling and sort of cloning facilities going on there, hybridization chambers.
I think of that more as Chimera stuff, so I guess I kind of glazed over any mentions of cloning, but yeah, I'm with you. The Allegan stuff is all still very murky for me. I also don't like... I've been burned by ancient civilizations, precursors, in basically any fiction ever. It is like probably my least favorite trope in anything. So I tend to, it's not what I find the most interesting. I don't think it's bad, and I'm not here saying that Final Fantasy XIV is doing a bad job of it. I'm saying that it's not where I personally show up with my ears on to be interested in the lore. This is where I kind of mentally check out. I'm like, well, Kyle will remind me whatever happened.
It's a huge chance for a ball drop, right? That's where I have a little bit of concern here with Grahatia. Like, he's kind of looking priestly. He's got this big staff going on. He's clearly been corrupted, or at least infused, maybe enhanced, but probably more in that corruption line, while in the Crystal Tower, becoming Crystal himself. I'm curious. I'm very curious to see what they do with him that grounds him and makes him a functioning character.
I'm like convinced this Grahati, and I promise you I haven't Googled this. I don't know the answer. But I'm convinced. And so when he finally reveals himself to us, I'm going to be like, what's up, bro? Why didn't you just like right away? Just be like, hey, it's me, your boy. How you been? Long time, no Crystal. So I'm kind of curious. And they very quickly, when you get to Shadowbringers, change the name. It goes from the enigmatic figure to the Crystal Exarch, which I'm still like, I know who you are. Why we playing this game? Why are you taking me on a whole tour of the Crystarium and not telling me who you are? Doesn't matter. Anyway, I like this whole scene. I like the way the Final Fantasy XIV does the ephemeral. I like when it does these out of body scenes. We're heading to other realities or dimensions or reflections. Probably because of my deep love of something like Ocarina of Time, because I'm right there with you. This, like, when I'm standing on a floating platform in space while magic bowl is being fired in my lore brain, that's the first thing I think of every single time, because that game was such an experience and I was such the perfect age for when Ocarina came out. But they nail it every time. And whether this is Grahati or not, whoever the enigmatic figure is, it's a fantastic costume design. It's such a good robe and hood. This game needs more hoods. Hashtag where are my hoods? It was cool. Again, I feel like Final Fantasy XIV is respecting my time, because throughout all these patches from 4.4 onwards, it's like, what's going on with this call? Where is this voice coming from? Here I am, me, in my experience playing through it, starting to feel like they're helpful. Like there may not be a villain. And then before you have to start the wait for the next expansion, you get a little bit of an answer here. Hey, here's this person. Seems like they're actually here to help you. Here is who the voice is. We get some answers. We don't get them all, but it's enough to make it feel, to me, satisfying. This game just consistently makes me feel like my time put into it is time well spent. And I really like that.
I'm glad they didn't dangle this too much either. Like, we get straight to, upon reaching the expansion, this plot line. This could have been teased out a lot longer. So in that way, I don't have a ton of questions because I feel like they're going to be answered soon. I would kind of hyper analyze what he has to say here, but really he's just telling you the next part of the quest.
Go to the Crystal Tower. I have left something for you near its base.
Now he does have this interesting line here about,
and the path to the first will be yours to walk at last.
never mind, I don't have any questions. Because he says the path to the first. Because
I'm about to say,
we're going to go to the first.
I have zero questions about that. I even remember that's where the Warriors of Darkness are from. It's the one that fell to the light.
I mean, if anything, I'm just more excited to hang out with Amric again. You know, I'm back in bed, Estinian's bed. Just happy to see the guy. It feels like it's been forever.
Why is Estinian ghosting us, man?
Dude, yeah, not cool. Not cool, man.
Yeah, although, I mean, you said you felt a sense of urgency. We're ripped from the battlefield. You said that you felt like, I need to get back. I need to go back. I think Estinian has that sense of urgency. Showed up at the right time, saved our bacon, brought us to the hospital, and he's off again being the Lancer Batman that he is.
Yes. Stop with the contactless delivery, Estinian. Like, let's meet up. Let's hang out a little bit. I didn't expect the Heaven's Word throwback here, but it's really nice. It's very welcome. You know, we get to hang out with Amric for a little bit. We get to see some Ishgardian halls.
Or the game is going out of its way just so we can have another scene with Count Edmund, and I will very much allow it. That's
enough for me. He's such a great father figure. It's a great little check-in. This serves as almost permission to leave. Raban, all the Eorzean leaders, they need us. We're needed on this world. Edmund kind of gives you that little clasp on the shoulder and that you're all grown up. Do what needs to be done. And I loved it.
I have a lot of baggage with that. Haurchefant was like the first side character I really, really liked.
I guess the only question I have about all this, and it's probably answered by the fact that we're special, is why we need a special object at the base of the Crystal Tower to go get. We're so immune to the call, we don't go on our own like the others?
Well, when we go there, we are physically moved to the first. It's different from just meeting with Grahatia, or enigmatic figure.
How do you know that? Because it could be
because we end up on the first.
I mean, but we could be a spirit there. We could have, Tataru and Star Wars guys could all be hanging out with our body, taking care of us.
I don't mean to infer all of that. I just mean to infer that it's clearly different than our first meeting with the enigmatic figure. Because he tells us, I left you a boon that works as something. I think he says it works like something of a beacon. So, like, why would he send us on that wild goose chase if he could just bring us to the first in that meeting right then and there?
Makes you wonder what state our friends are in. You know what I hope they do? Because it's a trope I love from Grandia 2 and all these sort of video games, particularly JRPGs, is that they're all corrupted, that we got to go hunt our friends to free their spirits from whatever happened to them in transit.
Ooh, that'd be cool. But we haven't gotten confirmation, right? Like maybe our body's just laying back there at the boon?
Yeah, it could be.
So then we get yet another meanwhile in the throne room. Varys is not pleased with Xenos, who is actually Elidibus piloting Xenos. And they're mad at each other. Elidibus is mad that Varys abandoned the front. This is where Varys talks about he can't be, he's returned to deal with the growing concerns in Garlemald that Xenos is, quote,
possessed by a demon.
Which I wonder if that offends Elidibus. If he's like, please, a demon? Oh my God. I am an Ascian.
Yeah.
I like to think that it offends him, but it didn't seem like it. Not the way that being compared to birdmen offends Varys, but they got a little spat here. And Varys even goes on to say that
this war will not be decided by you and yours. Man must choose his own fate, and I, for my part, will do all within my power to see Garlemald emerge victorious.
I feel like Varys needs to slow his roll here, because we know now that while Varys wants to bring upon the calamity and help the Ascians succeed in the rejoining, that he then hopes to betray them and somehow oust the Ascians after helping them do what they wanted to do, which I still think is a terrible plan. But this line, to me, felt like him kind of tipping his hand. This isn't about you. This isn't about the Ascians. It's like he's putting probably the most respect on quote-unquote man, as we've seen Varys do.
I took it slightly different, and that's when he says,
I will not be made to fight for the throne a second time.
He wants to maintain his position of power so that when the Ascian rejoining plan goes off, he's still able to enact his plan to break free of it on the other side. So he's frustrated with Xenos, who's calling into question the lineage, the structure of the Empire by being accused of being a demon or possessed in some way and ruining Varys's plan.
I think where I ended up is pretty in line with what you're talking about there. That still ties into the quote-unquote chip on Varys's shoulder, right? Because the last time we saw Varys angry at Nassian, it was Solace.
He's probably pissed, right? Because Solace finally pieces out, stops bothering him. He's going to win this big war. He's going to be done. And Ascian Xenos is causing problems. He wants to be in charge, free of them.
Black Rose production has also started back up again. We find out in this scene the evil doctor that has my Warrior of Light's haircut delivers that news to Varys. And then we get Varys looking at the Garlean banner in extreme close-up in a way that made me realize that his headpiece is also the Garlean banner. I don't know if you noticed, but the little black crown piece that squiggles in on his forehead then ends in the gator brackets basically around the Garlean eye. And that's, I'm like, oh, I never really noticed that in the Garlean banner before. Don't know why. Makes me wonder, like, oh, what is there more to this symbology than that? Doesn't matter. Then we just get a really creepy close up on Varys showing up out of the shadow, which you mentioned last video. You think he's ascending to an Ascian. I say this with all the love in the world, Kyle. This is the first time I think you're completely high on something special. You just like shot off the tracks of this story. That is such a swing for the fences assumption of where the story is going that I'm like, I think Kyle's crazy.
But where do Ascians come from, if not black masked cultists who ascend?
They're already but the black masks, they are still Ascians. They're just not super powerful Ascians. Gaius is explaining Ascians, and he says the black masked ones are like the underlings. Still describes them as Ascians.
Well, if you're gonna bring, how does he get the masks? Now we have a new question.
Wait, okay, now are we curious about how he gets a physical manifestation of an Ascian mask to even hang on his belt in the first place? Oh my God.
Exactly.
How does that work?
Do they drop loot when they die?
How does he even
real?
see the Ascians?
I don't, yeah.
Wait.
Yeah, great question.
Kyle, I don't have time for this. I didn't come here to have conversations about questions I didn't know I had.
Okay, and now we're putting me in position to make more bad theories, but there's a world where maybe Gaius got bathed in the light in the fight and now has like slight echo so he can see them or something.
I mean, he was close to the explosion of Ultima, which had consumed like the most powerful primals at the time. That's a lot of ether. And the last time we saw a powerful primal die or explode, it was Shinryu, which left Xenos still with so much ether energy he was able to jump to another body upon death.
Bathed in power, right? I mean, I'm taking frog DNA and just shoving it in dinosaurs. I'm doing what I can here to make this work. The scene that this reminds me of most is Archbishop on the ground saying, "What are you?" And then we fall into this darkness. And it blocks out our face. Granted, Warrior of Light's face isn't then animated to emerge from the shadows. But that is the closest connection visually that I have to go off of. And I rewatched that scene, didn't get anything out of it. Didn't really see a connection. The only thing that I gather from that scene is we are closer to Ascians than we probably think we are. And I think that Minfilia is probably a good Ascian, if we've ever met one, empowered by the mother as a vessel. And we are, in that way, empowered like an Ascian, which is why when we res at a crystal in the middle of a city, we kind of fold out like Ascians do when they res. Unless, of course, they're going and getting clone body and teleporting back. But, that's the complexity of the nature of this. If you want a better theory, I ain't got one. They did this on purpose, and credits roll right afterwards. They wanted this to be the final thing you see.
I hope everybody enjoyed this edition of Probably Wrong Theory Time. I don't know. Part of me thinks it's just stylistic. It's just, look at Varys being evil. It's the final thing before the credits and cut. Just get in there. Just cut it away. And then we get essentially post-credits. It doesn't actually technically happen in post-credits. You have to click on another quest to wrap up Stormblood. But after watching the beautiful credits with those illustrations are so amazing, it makes me want to order the Stormblood art book. But really, I think I just want prints of those to hang in this room. Essentially, what is an epilogue or a post-credit scene upon doing like the final quest in Stormblood is Xenos in his new Elysian body, cutting down folks on the battlefield, trying to find his actual body, I think, because he says he wants to reclaim what is rightfully his. Is he talking about his body? When he says that, they do a close-up of the Garlean banner flapping, which makes me think his ambitions might go beyond his body. I wonder if something's happened where suddenly he has political desires. Like maybe he wants to go lead Garlemald. It makes me wonder if Varys saying, I will not be made to fight for the throne a second time is some sort of foreshadowing. Because wouldn't it be a little base if what Varys was concerned about was just a kind of run-of-the-mill rebellion where the Popularis or whatever other factions are going on in Garlemald rise up and decide that they want to lead? Wouldn't it be more interesting if Xenos has a hair now, is just mad about how everything has played out, about how he was a pawn in all of this, that he wants to go back, kill his dad, and rule the throne with his original body or maybe a new body or whatever? He's power hungry, he's got ether. There's so many ways this could go, but for me, I'm linking this. Like, I think they didn't do a close-up on that Garlean banner just for the fun of it.
I think you're onto something there because of Black Rose. Xenos would not think Black Rose a fitting weapon for his empire. Because Xenos is in it for the kill, the thrill of the battle, the greatest game and all that sort of thing. There's a moment here, too, where Xenos turns rather dramatically, closes in on a dead Garlean soldier, making me think he's going to body hop again. Going to get himself a new disguise. He's looking for himself on the battlefield, but now he came up with a new idea that he's going to infiltrate the Garlean Empire rather than keep hanging out with resistance forces.
Oh, I didn't read that at all. I thought it was just him scrounging, and there happens to be dead Garleans because it's a war front that involved Garlemald.
It's a walk with purpose. I read into it, and then we get our teaser. Us standing on the edge of the Crystal Tower with one of those lines. I mean, I don't know if the fantasy jargon at the end of credits is really ever worth analysis. It's always so messy. In the midst of a requiem for heroes, a voice rings out across time and space. In fields of tranquil light, sow your seeds of darkness. The end. Please buy our game.
There is something they read into there that sow your seeds of darkness, and the next expansion is called Shadowbringers. And at the time of recording this, we have taken our first steps into 5.0. We have gotten to the Crystarium, but we are going to do a standalone video to talk about that because that's its whole thing. I think we are going to want to find a way to bring some shadow to our actions or to our world, because the Garleans are going to do it for us, and we don't like the way they're going about it. I think we are going to eventually learn about the balance and find a better way to go about keeping that balance. I think that's where we're heading.
Elidibus is convinced, as well as Lahabre in the past, that killing the Warrior of Light seems to be the quickest way to solve all this, to get things back in balance. Are we going to go to the first and just start kicking bunnies or something? Like, what level of evil deeds does it require to bring balance through us? It'll be interesting. Be interesting to see.
Well, dude, we've finished Stormblood.
The end. Credits rolled.
So how do you feel about the expansion as a whole?
I don't think it's fair to ask it that way. Because Stormblood, without a doubt, is the biggest MMO thing I've ever done. Because we've done everything. We did all the bonus dungeons. The raids, Omega, Evilise. We did side things like the monster hunting trial. We're leveling multiple jobs up to get ready for these role quests. We had so many villains. We had Xenos, Yatsuyu's storyline. Gotsetsu seems like a distant past memory at this point, and that was a huge part of that story. When people complain about Stormblood, they're talking about such a small fraction of it, and it's just the MSQ.
It's really just the beginning.
From Doma Castle on, I think it's solid.
It is a long road to Doma Castle. It is important to remember that. The story
Yes, it is.
It is thick, and slow until Doma Castle.
And that early part didn't pay off in the ways I wanted it to. I wanted to see action go down in Kugane, some sort of battle there. The embassy's still in tow. They've justified it well with the whole mercantile kind of culture they have going on and the we don't betray any business. But I expected that deep political talk with Hancock to pay off big. And instead it was background flavor that you were forced to experience.
How is Coils of Bahamut not required, but all that talking with Hancock is? Leaving Stormblood, I'm feeling really excited about when we are current, and content or not, I'm looking forward to having the geeky conversation with you where we rank our favorite expansions. Like, I'm looking forward to just sitting down and having that conversation. Like, what was your favorite? What was my favorite? Talking through all of it. Because so far, I haven't hated any of it. Like, I'm starting to get what people are saying where they're like, no, it's not that Stormblood is bad. It's that it's placed in between absolute banger expansions, Heavensward and Shadowbringers. So obviously I'm excited to step forward into Shadowbringers as well and get a more fully formed idea of what folks are going on about. But it's a really good expansion. To me, it feels like A Realm Reborn 2 in a way, because it's so focused on the world that we're in and the political climate of the various nations that we're helping and we're fighting against. Whereas Heavensward was so focused on Ishgard and dragons. Still political in a way, but we've revisited old Realm Reborn cutscenes recently to remind ourselves of what the hell's going on with Ascians and what came before, because it's been a while now since we played A Realm Reborn. And that does feel old and moldy now to me. It feels like you watch those old cutscenes, you're like, my God, this game has come such a long way. And so in that regards, if both A Realm Reborn and Stormblood are slow burns, I go Stormblood every day. Like, Stormblood just seems to be doing what A Realm Reborn does better. And I think that's really cool. And there's some fantastic character arcs in this expansion. I'm leaving it feeling good. Feel really good about Stormblood, and I think part of the market quality of Stormblood is the fact that so much of it is still present in the 4.4 and onward patches. Like, we're still capping it off with the Xenos fight. We started this expansion with a Xenos fight, and even though Elidibus is there pulling the strings, he's doing a really good Xenos impression.
I think in the end, a lot of Stormblood just wasn't fun. War, oppression, horrible parents. Dragon invasions are just more fun. But
that's fair.
We had to do all that so that the Garlean Empire's threat was real. That they had something they could take away from us. When we make this world a better place, and then they want to destroy it with something like the Rejoining, there's got to be a threat there. Otherwise, this ticking clock I keep talking about doesn't work. It's a problem that World of Warcraft suffers from. It's that expansionitis kind of problem where every time you go somewhere new, you forget about everywhere you just were. Like, we're going to the first because we care about this world, the source that we're on.
Yeah, and it ties into the Garlean plot, which was a massive plot point in Stormblood. But you're right. You're right. It's not like we're not going zone by zone, and every zone has its own little perfectly insulated story. There's some of that in the beginning of Stormblood, but even that, it eventually all connects. Hien shows up to help Alamigo. Yeah, you've got the Dome in front and you've got the Alamiga in front, but eventually they coalesce. It's good storytelling. That's all I'm trying to say.
And without the Ruby Sea, Jatar would have no money.
For Lords, specifically.
And so maybe like a tier list of what 10 level bracket or zone would be better, because to take all of Stormblood and put it in the trash because you didn't like the start or because it was slower, like it's so interwoven, particularly our experience, because we're not waiting on the box copy to come out. Like, we're not sitting there for 3 months saying when. Like, we see the Crystal Tower here in the distance in the final scene. We went there 3 minutes later with very little disconnect.
Did you know that Final Fantasy XIV is a good game?
Welcome to Shadowbringers, Garrett.
Thanks, man. Let me hold the gates for you. Well, we'll see you next time to talk about the Crystarium.